So, at any rate, so good morning again. So, my name is Eldon Yang. I'm an associate professor in the Department of Medicine, Division of HIV/AIDS and Infectious Diseases. And I co-direct the CFAR Implementation Science Working Group, and I have the good fortune of being the organizer of today's symposium. So I'm very excited this morning because we have an opportunity to do two of my favorite things. One is talk about implementation science, and the second is to spend time with colleagues and friends. I'm very excited to do so. Before we get started, I want to thank the CFAR directors, Paul Wolverding and Warner Green, for hosting this symposium and also for prioritizing implementation science. I think there are some exciting times ahead in that regard. I also want to thank Lauren and Cesar for doing all the heavy lifting to make this happen. Thank you very much, both of you. And then lastly, I just want to thank everybody who has gotten up bright and early in the morning with or without jet lag to be here and brave the Salesforce traffic to get here. So this year's symposium is about new directions and opportunities in methods and implementation science, and I think we've titled it "Closing the Gap Between Rigor and Relevance." So in order to frame today's discussion, I think it's worth reflecting for a moment on the remarkable arc over the last 30 years of both the HIV epidemic and the scientific response to the epidemic. On the one hand, the HIV epidemic has really affected almost every corner of the globe, and from many people's perspective has been the public health challenge of our generation. But on the other hand, we know a tremendous amount about the virus, and we know how it works, we know the immunology, we know a lot of details about the epidemiology, and most importantly, we have very efficacious interventions to prevent and to treat HIV infection. And this is a schematic that shows a timeline of some of the major advances, mid-90s antiretroviral therapy, which has recently been estimated to be able to help recover probably 94 or more % of expected lifespan. We know how to prevent vertical transmission. We know that suppression in an infected partner in a serodiscordant relationship will prevent onward transmission. There are medications that people can take who are HIV uninfected to prevent acquisition that are highly efficacious. And this has been a sort of remarkable success from a scientific point of view. But gaps do remain, and we are at a formidable crossroads, I think, even today. So this is what's widely known as the cascade of HIV care. And even though the numbers differ from place to place, in general, the theme remains the same, which is that not all persons who are infected have been tested and know their status. Not everyone has been linked to care and started treatment. Not all people who have started treatment remain on treatment. And at the end of the day, the fraction of people who derive the full benefits of these scientific discoveries is usually only a fraction of those who could. So the desire to address these gaps has really energized, I think, the field around the concept or the idea of implementation science, which is to turn a systematic scientific lens onto the behavior of systems, of healthcare workers, of communities, of patients, in order to optimize the uptake of these evidence-based interventions. But as we have, as motivation for implementation science builds, the question of how exactly to do implementation science, what is good implementation science, I think has become a question that has come to the fore. So this is a heuristic that was taken originally from some organizational psychologists in which they defined research along two axes. So many of you will have seen this before, but on the x-axis here is the relevance of the research in diverse real-world practice contexts, and on the y-axis is methodological rigor. So they contend that research that is neither relevant nor rigorous is puerile. But research that's highly rigorous but not that relevant is pedantic. Research that is very perceived as relevant but not rigorous is populist. And finally, where they think that applied sort of research should go, where implementation science should go, is in the top right quadrant. So it's both rigorous and relevant, and they call that pragmatic. And I think in implementation science today, there's a feeling perhaps that we can't have our cake and eat it too. That research that is highly rigorous might not be relevant, and the reverse might also be true. Questions are often asked, such as, can complex real-world interventions really be studied with randomized trials? Can adaptive interventions or other complicated approaches, are they amenable to rigorous designs? On the other hand, you hear folks say, I was told as a medical student that only randomized trials can give you causality, and I think many people in this room will perhaps disagree with that statement. But the question, I think, has really come to sort of how we go about doing so. So I think today's conversations are meant to offer perhaps a different hypothesis or a different roadmap, which is that with creative and innovative thinking, that we can have research that is both rigorous and highly relevant. But I think we do need to do things differently, and I think we have a great lineup of speakers who hail from faraway places such as London and Kenya via Kansas, as well as other exotic places such as Davis. I can make fun of Davis because I grew up in Davis, as well in Palo Alto, but we also have many local speakers from Berkeley and from here at UCSF that I think I'm very much looking forward to hearing from. So I'm going to end this very brief introduction to the day with this picture. So this is, I had the good fortune, I couldn't resist showing a picture of but so I had the good fortune of going to Athens this last summer with my family, and my wife and Cayenne, our 5-year-old. And when I was in Athens, the people there emphasized that what was unique about places like the Parthenon and the Agora was not so much that they were beautiful buildings built long ago, because in other places of the world, in China and Egypt and other places, people were also building amazing things. But what was different was that Athens was the only place in the world where people built these things not because of the fiat of a king or an emperor, but because they got together and they talked about it, and as a group, they decided to do it. And oftentimes, I go to meetings where people deplore talk, right? They say, oh, the only thing that's going to come out of this meeting is talk. I think that the opposite is true. I think probably everything great that people have done has come from talk. And I'm hoping that today will be an opportunity for us to have a conversation together that I hope will carry forward into the future and help us think about the future of implementation research. So thanks again for being here. And with that, let me ask Dr. Margaret Hanley to come up and start our first session. Thanks.